Hello, hello, fearless listeners. Are you ready for another episode of Let Fear Bounce? It's the podcast that's all about conquering challenges and facing our fears. I'm your host, Kim Langley, and each week we'll dive into inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical tips to help you turn your fear into your greatest ally. So sit back, relax, grab that cup of coffee, and let's discover how to make fear our bouncing board towards a life filled with endless possibilities right here on Let Fear Bounce. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langley, your host, and I'm so happy that you are deciding to spend just a small part of your day with myself today and my special guest, Alyssa Hall. Now, she is an author, and she's an author of the gripping psychological mystery, plural, folks, Trusting Claire, Wanting Aidan, Romero Pools, and Hero of Blackpool. Now, she draws inspiration from her own life experiences and travels. And growing up in Newmarket, Ontario, within a multi-generational family of Russian war refugees, Hall overcame challenges such as schoolyard taunting and dyscalculia. And I don't know if I pronounced that right, but it means dyslexia of numbers. So, wow, all kinds of interesting stuff that we can talk about. But Alyssa, thank you so much for being my guest today on Let Fear Bounce. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Kim. It's great to be here.
So I want to talk about the dyslexia of numbers first, because I had honestly not heard that word. I had to look it up before we chatted today. That had to have been so hard growing up with that. Did you know that that's what you had, or were you labeled something when you were in school because it was like you weren't understanding math?
Yes, I wasn't understanding. So very typically I was labeled as just not trying hard enough or not interested or being rebellious, refusing because people wanted me to try harder. I honestly had a really, really, really hard time. Consistent failing marks. It just was very difficult, very difficult. And you walk in every day feeling really stupid. You know, your classmates all sniggle at you, and it was just hard. And to this day, there's still things I still need to count on my fingers.
And well, so do I. So
Thank goodness for calculators.
that's right. You had mentioned that it was very difficult, and that had to have left really long-lasting effects on you as you grow up in your teen years and young adulthood and even into adulthood. How did that, because I can only assume, correct me if I'm wrong, you had mentioned that the kids they would sniggle at you. Were they taunting? Were they bullying?
Well, I think it was bullying more because of my heritage, because of my funny little Russian family and our funny clothes. And, you know, we sort of all lived in one house and we all wore hand-me-downs and we were probably shy. And then you add to that, you're not grasping stuff at school, and then it never gets better. The grasping stuff, well, a lot of it did, but at first, you know, they probably just thought the math was a case of that. But I guess it was just all compounded. And when you get older and people want to play board games like backgammon or card games, and you shy away because you're sitting there looking at them and you can't add them up. I mean, it's minor, but it matters to you when you're the one in that position.
Oh, absolutely, it would matter. Yes, because it would make you feel less than.
Of course, always.
Now, do you carry any of that with you now in adulthood?
I'll forever think of myself as flawed, but maybe the math isn't as big a part of it anymore. I mean, you work around it. You know, like I say, calculators, as long as you put the numbers in correctly to begin with. I often dial the wrong number, little things, but you certainly overcome them as you get older.
You said that you still look at yourself as flawed.
I do, based on the upbringing I had. I actually do, yes. For as much as I've grown and for all the areas that I've become more confident, still deep inside, I do feel flawed.
So there's a little part of that little girl.
Yes. I read an interesting article in the paper the other day about shame. We definitely were raised with shame because of my grandparents' history and coming to a new country. And it becomes not an emotion, but it actually becomes a part of who you are. So it gets quite hard to shake it. So at first, then you feel like when you're doing really well and you're riding high, then you have imposter syndrome because you don't really deserve to be there. So yeah, it's always been it's one of those little things that never goes away, like a birthmark, you know.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Well, my next question. So say you're, first grade and your school, the other kids are making fun of you, the teacher doesn't understand you, you're frustrated and maybe really, really sad because you're just not getting it. The math portion, whatever it is that you're doing at that time, and you're just not getting it. What would you say to that little girl today?
I don't even know what I'd say to her. I wouldn't have I don't think I would have anything to say to her.
Not even you're going to get through it?
Well,
If
yeah,
she was a 6-year-old girl that you walked up to right now, I mean, would you want to give her a hug? Would you want to say you're going to
give
get
her a
through it,
hug.
kiddo?
Well, yes, today she would get through it. Absolutely, today there's help. She would get through it. She would be fine. On the big scheme of things, it's small, and she will get through it. Absolutely. If I met her back in my generation, I don't know if I'd be so ready to say that, but I definitely would say that to my little self today.
Yeah, that's what I meant. From you today, what would you say to your 6-year-old self?
Oh,
Yeah.
I would definitely say you'll get through it. Hug her and let her know it's not who she is. It's just one little thing that she does.
I did that as a practice for myself at one point, and I was asked by someone else, what would you say to your 5-year-old self? Knowing what you know now and all that you've been through, what would you say to your 5-year-old self? And that was a tough one. It stopped me for a minute or two.
Oh, just stop me.
Yeah, because there's so much in there.
There is.
It's a big question, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So every once in a while I toss it out there. Gets you thinking. It gets you thinking. But and I did the same thing with my little 5-year-old self. Just said, hey, it's going to be a bumpy road, kiddo. But there's going to be a lot of good in there too. But those bumps and bruises, you're going to carry scars. But holy cow, you're going to make it, and you're going to come out really strong for it.
My mother ended up raising 5 children on her own in a country not her own, where she didn't really speak the language. And my father wasn't so lucky. He didn't really make it because of the shell shock, and he was institutionalized. But then when I had my own little girl, so my mom really had no time to help us. She just wasn't interested. If you can't do it, quit, get a job. That's all. That was her advice. But with my daughter, she sat there patiently with the little sheets of timetables, and I remember sitting back looking at her, and I think I would have given anything for her to have done that with me. But I guess you learn, she's older, she's got more time, she's retired, she loves her grandchildren, maybe remembering what I went through. But I'll never forget the time she took with my daughter to make sure she did all her times tables and had them all down pat, memorized every one of them.
Isn't it interesting to see how the transitions happen through the generations?
Yes.
Interesting stuff. That's a book all on its own. Going through all of that, and you carry it with you, and obviously you still carry a little bit of it with you. You have 5 novels.
Yes.
You are a multi-published author. Now you write gripping psychological mystery. Where did that thought come from, that's the path, the type of writing you wanted to do?
I guess they're gripping. They're definitely psychological. They're good character studies. My characters are flawed. My characters are overcoming struggles. My characters are showing their good side. And I think because I grew up so introverted, I sort of went into myself because I guess I didn't really feel safe. So, and my sisters, I had, 3 sisters and a brother. There were 5 of us. And I just sat back and let them take over because the taunting happened at home too. So I guess I just stored all that in my mind. And when I finally started to write, it just exploded, and I just didn't know where it came from. And there's still so much in there. It's just coming out.
So the characters are part of you.
I think each one is definitely part of me. Hero of Blackpool, Hero is part of me. Claire is part of me, Trusting Claire. And this my latest book, And Then I Heard the Quiet. Valeria Russo is definitely a part of me, and so are the males. Like in my British detective series, Joe Parrott is also part of me. So there's little bits of me in all of them.
I think with any author that writes fiction, you have to put some of you in.
Yeah. They have to be relatable. And if I can't relate to them, I don't think anybody else could. So to make them really, really relatable, I really went inside and, made them as interesting as I could and flawed.
Psychological mystery. I see, and my brain wouldn't go that way. It's I love talking to other authors, especially those that write in a completely different genre. Because
Right.
it's just, most of what I write is nonfiction. And it's so interesting to hear why people write what they do, or why they even started off in that. And it always has something to do with their personal life or something that happened to them that guided them on that, into that direction. So fascinating stuff. So you've got a new book out, And Then I Heard the Quiet. I think that is a fantastic title.
Thank you.
I love it because it makes you think, ooh, at least that was my first reaction. Ooh, what's this one about? So tell us now, don't do any spoilers, but give us a little, little back cover blurb on what And Then I Heard the Quiet is all about.
Well, Valerie moves to the little village of Fort Langley in British Columbia, and she takes a job as a house sitter. But she doesn't want to say too much about where she's come from, what she's been through, why she chose there, what she's doing there. She'll give little snippets of her past, and she's kind of haunted by nightmares of her past, but it doesn't get revealed, obviously, till near the end of the book. But while she's there, she uncovers, oh, gee, drug problems and unsolved murder. It takes place, the timeline is 2009, just following the Willie Picton pig farm murders, those famous pig farm, and just before the start of the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver. So that's I laid it around that time period. So I've mixed in a little bit of fact with fiction.
Well,
And no, it's just how what she uncovers and what she goes through, and how she befriends certain people, and in the end, it's all revealed. So there are no spoilers. Vague enough.
it sounds fascinating. It sounds like a book that I'd want to read. I love reading pretty much anything. I'm a voracious reader. I read all the time. Well, as an author, do you read a lot?
I read a lot. I love reading. I love reading. It's
Is there any
inspiration.
particular type, genre that you prefer, or do you just read what tickles your fancy at the time?
No, I think sometimes I'll read a biography. Sometimes it has to interest me though. But I love reading the genre that I write. Like I've even been compared to Elizabeth George and Agatha Christie and Louise Penny, and that's what I love to read, and that's what I love to write. I have some favorite writers that I'll read every single thing that they write. I have to be really honest though, since I've started writing, I've become a lot more fussy. So if I pick up a book and by chapter 10, I'll say, I can't read this. This is crap. And I'll just shut it aside. I
I'm
just
so
can't.
glad you said that because I have found the more that I write personally, and then I will, maybe I'll find a new author. And this is an example. I started reading, and it was on my Kindle. So I'm reading the first book in like a 3-book series. I'm like, oh, well, that was it's like a fun, don't really have to think kind of read, because that's the kind of book I wanted to read at the time. And so I read it and I went, oh, well, that was fun. Let's see what's, what the next one's about. And the next one, I immediately, within the first 2 chapters, I'm going, this was not edited very well at all. I cannot believe. And then I found myself picking the book apart because of misspellings, or they ended the sentence on a preposition. And I'm going, how did they let that one slip by? It's, or they use the word that over and over and over. And I'm going, you don't even need that word in there.
I read a book by one woman, and almost every chapter she went, clearly, this wasn't the case. Clearly that, and I thought,
Redundant.
our
Yes.
editors say, stop using that word clearly. And I can't handle if all of a sudden the plot insults my intelligence. It gets really stupid. And I thought, oh, who's going to believe that? And then bang, there goes that book.
I love that because I just did that with a book last week. I read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, do they think that their readers are dumb? And
I know.
I actually got frustrated and said, I am not reading the rest of this book. Oh, look how picky we are.
Awful. And I don't like to admit that, but I don't know. I think it makes you a better reader. And I think being a good reader makes you a better writer.
Oh,
And
I completely agree with that.
some people are
Absolutely.
so fascinatingly creative. It just blows me away. And I'll read a, I just read, am I allowed to name books?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Tana French is one of my favorite writers. She's Irish. And a lot of hers have been like the police detective, raunchy, rough, violent. But she had a new one out a few years ago, and it was called The Searcher. And it was just about this American, I guess, ex-cop that just wanted to retire somewhere in Ireland on the coast. And I could read one paragraph over and over and over. And her writing is so brilliant. I thought, God, I'll never write that good. She's just so good. And I really appreciate when I pick up a really good book. And
Oh,
I,
I agree 100% with you. There's a couple authors that I've come across that I will read, and you read a paragraph, or even if it's just a sentence or two, and I have literally found myself putting the book down and just going, wow.
yeah, you got to digest it.
Yes. And I'm like, they just strung those words together in the most perfect way.
Yeah.
Will
And
will I ever be able to write like that?
and even if the plot of the book is simple, it could be even like a simple soft mystery or a silly little love story. But if the writing is that good, you just get mesmerized just reading the words. Yeah, I might never get that good, but I'm really glad she's that good because I can enjoy her. I
It,
strive, to be that little bit better.
I do. Yes. Yes. I think I feel the same way. I am really picky with what I write and how I write it. Are you the same? Like do you find yourself going, "Oh my gosh, just put this away, stop trying to edit your own stuff."
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But often I'll pick it up later and edit it anyway.
And do it again. Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm assuming you have an editor. So has your editor said, "Okay, just stop. Just finish writing the book. Quit going back and changing stuff. Just finish."
I write the entire book really quickly. I want my beginning, my middle, and my ending. And then I put it away for a month, and then I start all over again from the beginning to the end. And then I put it away again for a month or so, and then I pull it out. And in between, I'll be thinking about the book nonstop, and I'll write myself notes, where to fit them in if they would work. Sometimes they work, sometimes I throw them away. And I keep adding layers of paint until it's the right color.
I like that analogy. Good analogy. Paints a good picture in my head. No pun intended.
Yeah.
You said that you'll do it and then you let it sit for a month. And not everybody does that. Now, for me, I like writing short stories, like 3 to 6,000 words. That seems to be kind of like that's my fun spot, and I can really get into doing stuff like that. And when I do that, it comes on me in a rush. I get it all out, and then I too set it aside, and I always say, "Oh, that one's got to simmer for a bit."
Yeah.
And then I might come back to it a couple weeks, maybe a month later, and look at it and say, wow, that's not half bad. Or I'll look at it and say, wow, that's complete crap. What were you thinking?
Yeah. And other times I'll pick it up and I'll go, oh my God, that's brilliant. Did I really say that?
Right. I'm going to be the best author ever.
But I wished I had done that more with my first book. I was so excited to actually have written my first book. I was so excited because I wanted to tell parts of me. And man, I just the very first time I picked up a pen, I wrote it and published it in 3 months. My first.
Wow.
So maybe a little bit too fast, but I'll always be proud of it and I'll always like it. And there's always ways you can always go back, and even with a recipe, oh, I could have put a bit more salt or could have used more onion or whatever. But it is what it is. And I'm still really proud of it. But you do learn to slow down and look back and read again. And so
That was going to be one of my questions. Do you ever look back at what you wrote when you first started to seriously write, and then look at how you write today and say, wow, I'm so much better than I was?
when they arrive at my door in book form, I've never read one of them. So I
Oh,
guess
really?
it's like you hear an actor say they'll never go watch one of their own movies.
Right.
I always thought I would. I mean, I have them all here, and I always thought, maybe one day I'll read them, but I haven't wanted to. I just right now I'm at still really going forward. I'm in going forward mode.
I don't actually like hold my book in my hand and read it either,
No, I never have.
because I've read it so many times while it's being written.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, and then you're almost sick of it.
I know you can almost recite it cover for cover, and
Right, right. The very first book I did, I like you, I was super excited and just got it out there. It's no longer in print. I'm very thankful for, because I have physical copies of it. And it was a while ago, I picked it up and I started reading through. I'm like, oh, this is so awful. This is so awful. So one of my goals, I think, is to redo that one and republish it, change the name and just redo it
that's a
someday.
fabulous idea. I'm not against doing that at all.
Yeah, I think I might. I think I might do that. And I was going to ask you if that's something that like, well, with the first one, you said trusting Claire. You're like, you got it out there so quickly and you wish maybe, but it's also a learning experience, right?
And I think it's really good for readers too. I think if they kind of want to read your first because it sounds so interesting. It's a really good story because it's based on the life of her, Claire, that did have parents who were Russian immigrants. And she tells stories of her babushka, which were true to mine. And then she went to live in Greece for a while that was true to my life. So if you're intrigued by that and you kind of even remotely think, yeah, that was a decent book, and then you read the rest of them, they're going to get progressively better. So that's kind of a good carrot to give people.
So you've got how many books? It's a series, Trusting Claire being the first. Did they all go? Was it a series, or do the characters just kind of visit each other within each book? How's it working?
What I did with Trusting Claire, and then I wrote Wanting Aidan was my second. That was my first of my Joe Parrott private detective. I had a connecting character or two that could pop up in Wanting Aidan. Then I wrote Romero Pools, which actually was almost like a continuation of Trusting Claire. That was kind of my third book. I popped up with that. And then I wrote my second in my Joe Parrott series, Hero of Blackpool, which was titled A Joe Parrott Mystery. This new one is totally unrelated. I just wanted a book written about where I live now, about British Columbia. I thought it's a fascinating period in time, and Fort Langley is a fascinating little village. But now I'm starting to write my sixth, and that's going to be the Joe Parrott trilogy. It's only going to be a trilogy. There's only going to be 3 of them. But I'm going to reincorporate bits of Claire, and this is going to be a really, really good book. The caveat is you're going to have to read Claire and Joe Parrott in order to understand this one, but it's going to be really good. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds fascinating.
Well, they're kind of loosely connected, but not really. So there's 2 in the Claire, and that'll be a trilogy, which will actually be a trilogy for both. It'll be a trilogy for the Parrott and a trilogy for the Claire.
And how neat that they're interconnected that way. Well, and you would think that would make the readers even more interested.
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you hope so. And then I heard The Quiet that's just been released just within the last couple months. What is it that you do to prepare yourself when you've got a new book coming out? How is it that you mentally prepare yourself to get that out into the world?
That's the hardest part. The marketing is harder than writing. I mean, I can just sit down and write. Then my head is, like I said, full of ideas, but marketing is time consuming and exhausting and stressful. and expensive. And, and you kind of feel bad because the only access you have is social media. So your friends on Facebook get just so sick of hearing about it. So with each book, you try different things. I'm now really well into Instagram. I've been doing, not really like a tour, but I do signing events at Chapters Indigo. They carry my books at many of the major stores. I'm in 7 or 8 of them in Ontario and the Toronto area and in British Columbia. And when I live part-time in Tucson, because Romero Pools takes place between Tucson and Newmarket in Toronto, it goes back and forth. And I've done events at Barnes and Noble, and I've done art festivals, farmers markets here, and big book launch events. I'm finding now that's a very, very important thing, is to have a book launch. Try to get it out. I've been in a few newspapers that ran stories on my books. I'd like to try to get one locally for my new book, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you never think you reach enough people. No one's going to walk into a big box bookstore and go all the way to the back to the mystery section and pick up somebody named Hall when they've never heard of me. There's just too much in front, you've got all your John Grishams and everybody out front. So it's just getting people to know who the name is.
And you're right. Not all authors are good marketers.
No.
And they don't want to be, but so many of us, and I'm speaking for myself here, we're not mainstream. People don't know our names. We don't have big teams behind us or the big money, big dollar signs behind us to do all of that. So we have to do it on our own. And you're right. It's time consuming, can be very frustrating, can be expensive. And it's almost a full-time job to market the one book.
That's right. And people come up to me and say, "Ooh, I bet you're just raking it in," and if only they knew I'm thousands out of pocket, like
Right.
We're gonna rake it in.
That's what, yeah, yes, you are right. People, if they see that you've got more than one book out or even just a book published, they're like, "Oh, look at you, big stuff." And I'm like, I'm not big stuff at all. No one knows who I am. I'm not big stuff, or yeah, like you're raking it in. I'm going, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, the money goes out way more often than it ever comes in. So,
and it goes out long before the book does.
Yes.
Yeah, like you said, you're thousands out of pocket. Oh, I hear you on that one. People have no idea. And you can't, unless you are a big name, it's not an easy thing. And most don't make a living writing.
Right.
Who's going to go clear to the back of the store and pick out that one specific book by the author with the last name of Hall? When you're passing all this other stuff and you're like, "Oh, I know that author. John Grisham. Oh, he's got a new one out. Ooh, Nicholas Sparks. He's got a new one." So yeah, that's a perfect picture to paint for people, for authors like yourself and myself and many, many, many others. When you don't have that big name, it's just us slogging away, doing the best we can to get it out.
Especially when alphabetically, if they come down that aisle, you got Tana French and Elizabeth George and then Alyssa Hall, which alphabetically come before me. So they're gonna, "Oh, I heard about this new author, Alyssa Hall, but ooh, look, Tana French."
Right. Easily distracted. And and I love bookstores, and I can honestly say that when I go into a bookstore, I'm not looking for a particular author.
Me either. No, I
kind of go by, be like, "Ooh, I want to check that one out. Ooh, let me read the back of that one." But
catchy title, the catchy cover.
yes, the title and the cover. I'm drawn to softer, and that's the only way I can describe it. Softer colors and softer pictures.
I know what you mean.
Those grab my attention more than something like stark black and white.
Big, bright, flashy, fluorescent red, huge letters.
Right. Yeah. Those actually make me anxious.
They make me want to pass them over. And
yeah. Isn't that interesting? But I also know, like from marketing gurus, that's what draws people's attention. And I'm like, well, it might not draw everyone's attention. And I think it's how your brain works. Because for mine, I go for more softer, Yeah, softer. It's the only word I can come up with for that. Softer things grab my attention more than the red and black and white and neon colors and big letters and,
Muted, subtle tones.
muted. Yes, muted, softer, subtle. Those are the words. Yeah.
I
Interesting
like.
stuff. So when's the last time you were in a bookstore to actually go buy a book for yourself?
Well, Tana French, when she wrote The Searcher, she followed it up with one called The Hunter, and it is like a continuation of the story. So I was in there actually last week arranging a book signing for my new book, and while I was there, I always peruse what's new and what's out. It's not out yet, but I did go looking for it. So I did have a quick look around, but I didn't buy anything this time.
The closest bookstore to me is an hour away now. All of the bookstores have closed.
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
It is. It's very sad. Because I think for me, walking into a bookstore is like walking into a library.
It is.
I'm just like, I take a deep breath and just go, oh my goodness. Where should I look first? It's exciting to me, and I could spend hours.
We're lucky we have a really lovely little independent bookstore right in Fort Langley. But she won't take my books because I'm self-published, so I don't go in there.
And see, I don't get that. I just don't understand that. And that's not the only place that does that. Yes, if you're self-published, a lot of folks will pass you on by.
Right, some book writing competitions, you can't even submit if you're self-published. But Chapters Indigo have been very kind to me, and I can just send an email to the Western Regional or the Eastern Regional Directors of Canada, and I can just say, hey, how about we also put my books in Victoria in the capital? And they go, sure, and they order a bunch and send them down. It's really, really good of them. But then the only way to really make that work is then I have to arrange to have a signing event so I can sit at the front of that store so people get to see me and know who I am.
Right, right.
Beyond that day, I don't know if anybody would go in and buy anything beyond that day, but at least it's something. If I get, 20 more people to have one of my books in their hand at the end of each event, I feel, wow, there's that many people that know who I am. And then I feel successful. That's all I need is just that little bit.
Well, and I think doing actual book signing events in a store, and I've not done that. So, I mean, and that's something it's on my bucket list. That's something I actually do want to do and set up. I just have not. But I think, what do you have, like a bunch of nerves that day, or you're sitting there, you've got all your books and you're ready to sign, and do you sit there with that whole self-worth thing again coming in, thinking, is anyone going to show up?
Oddly enough, no. My sister, she was actually the one that I was the least close to, and she was the one that was the hardest on me growing up. When we were teenagers, if she was walking down the street with her friends and I happened to walk up, she'd cross the street. But she's really, really good. She's my biggest fan. I had a signing event on Vancouver Island in her town, and she came with her husband. And she stood off to the side and watched me. And she came up and hugged me. And she says, I've never seen you looking so confident and so knowing who you are and so comfortable in your skin. And I just didn't feel an ounce of hesitation, or what did I call it? That imposter syndrome. I was more nervous coming on your show because I actually had to talk about myself, but to stand there proudly over my books, no, it's just exhilarating. It's fabulous. And people will walk up and say, wow, you wrote all of these? And I'll go, yep. And it's just a great feeling.
How
And
awesome.
yeah,
And what an inspiration to other authors out there that might be thinking or in the midst of planning their own launches where they're actually going to be in it. Because not everybody does that.
yeah, I
Goes,
know.
does a book signing at a bookstore or does book signings at all. A lot of folks, it's not really the norm anymore.
Right.
Used to be pre-pandemic. You know what I mean? But everything has changed so much since then. Now, my very first book, and I was just a co-author in it, I did have an in-person signing, and that was just for friends and family and by invitation only. And that was
Right.
literally the only one I did.
Wow.
I've not done one since then. Don't know if I will. It all depends, I guess. All depends. So I love hearing about people that do that, and that you're exhilarated by it.
Yeah, I was in Tucson. We're snowbirds, so we have a house there. We've been going there for 15 years to get away from winter. And they have a huge annual art and crafts festival. And for the last 2 or 3 years, I rented a table there and I had my books and everyone around me, and they're selling like candles and knitwear and gorgeous wood carvings and just the most beautiful artsy things. And I'm sitting at the table with my books. And for the first half hour, people weren't even looking at me. They were just going on and they were just enamored by all the pottery and all the beautiful things. So I just started to talk to people as they walked by, and I sounded like a broken record. Hi, I write mystery novels. And then people started to stop and they say, "Oh, you mean you actually always written all of these? I thought you were just here for a library or something."
Oh yeah, no one realized that you were the actual author.
I was the author. So I sold out 2 years in a row of every single book that I brought to that table. I might have brought like 40 copies of each book. And by the end of it, people were giving me orders to order a copy. It was just so fabulous.
Oh, how
Um,
exciting. How fun.
Now, of course, I've already signed up to go back next year, but people love it. It's good to see that people still love to pick up a book in their hands and read it. And it's really
Right.
sad that bookstores are closing, but I could not believe the interest once they realized why I was there, that I was actually selling my own. And
Yeah.
I line up at the table. It was great.
And I bet a lot of people don't think about that craft store or craft markets and things like that of a place to actually, get a table and set yourself up and sell some books.
Mm.
That's actually not one I would have thought of doing.
Right.
And it's turned out to be wildly successful for you. How exciting. You get to do the one-on-one with brand new, you know, fans of your stuff. You're
Sure,
meeting you're meeting the readers face to face.
they can ask me questions about them. They can ask me to autograph them, and they go, "Oh, please sign it to me." And they're just so pumped. And often they'll contact me after and let me know how they enjoyed the book, which is really, really nice when some people take the time out to do that. So,
It is. It's validating.
and that to me is my success, self-publishing or not, or how worldly I get to be known or not, but just those tiny little successes, that's it for me. That's my legacy.
For me, it's truly humbling if someone, and it could be months later, and say, "Oh, you're her? I read your book not that long ago. Oh my gosh, you brought me to tears. I
Nice.
just loved," and it's so humbling
It is.
when you get a message like that, either it's in person or through a message through Facebook or email or whatever. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I feel so strongly nudged to keep on.
Very rewarding.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for I mean, time has flown. It always goes so fast. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Let Fear Bounce. This has been a true pleasure and blessing to have you on and get to know you a little bit and hear about your writing journey. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
And thank you for having me, Kim. You are a wonderful, wonderful person. I wish you all the success in the world. And it was really great meeting you. Really, really lovely meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. How humbling. Now, I ask all of my guests before we wrap up if they would toss out a nugget of hope to the listeners today, something that they can tuck away and carry with them. So, what would your nugget of hope be for the listeners?
My nugget of hope is every one of you, no matter what you're feeling, you are definitely worth it. You are someone to be proud of. Um, we all matter, every one of us. We all have put aside the little things that are niggling. Don't let them niggle, and just be the beautiful you that you are.
That is an awesome nugget. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I hope everybody out there listening, I hope that you caught that little nugget that she just tossed out there to you, because you are all awesome and you're all here for a reason. So go on out there into the world and rock your bad self, by golly.
All right.
Well, Lisa, thank you once again for being my guest on Let Fear Bounce.
Thank you, Kim. Take care.
And everybody out there listening, thank you again for joining myself and Alyssa today for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Stay tuned and tune in each Wednesday. New episodes drop. And again, this is Kim Langley, your host of Let Fear Bounce. Everybody be well, stay well, and be blessed. And that is a wrap, my fearless friends. Thanks for bouncing along with me on another episode of Let Fear Bounce. I hope you're feeling a bit motivated and ready to take on any challenge that might come your way in the coming days. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of Let Fear Bounce. Tune in each week for your dose of inspiration from my amazing guests from all over the world. So until next time, keep bouncing forward and stay fearless, my friends. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed.